Today, we're talking to Ace Chapman. Ace has bought over 40 offline and online businesses over the last 16 years. He's still doing deals personally and acts as a consultant to other business buyers. In this episode, we discuss how Ace found his mentor and how you can too. The lessons this mentor taught Ace, like why cash flow trumps net worth, why starting a business is a luxury, and why buying something established is a much safer approach. We'll get into a case study of one of Ace's clients who, with Ace's guidance, raised funds to buy a business and was able to generate a personal income of $135,000 a year on only a $50,000 investment. Now, before we get started, I want to give shout outs to our latest 5-star iTunes and Stitcher reviews. This review comes from Healing Tao 1, who says, "I love the way Chris probes each guest to give out as much detail as possible. I'm looking forward to learn more and hopefully get out of my current 9-to-5 prison corporate job." Well, Healing Tao, I hope you can make that happen as well, and hopefully this show is going to support you in that process. Do you want to get your name or business mentioned on the show? Take a moment to leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher, and I'll give you a shout out on a future episode. All right, let's get this show started. So as you know, I always start the show with this simple question. Let's say that one of your friends' moms asks you what you do. How do you answer that?
I flip businesses. And for most people, initially they've never heard of that. But because there have been 100 different shows about flipping houses and that kind of thing, I can use that as kind of the foundation of, okay, heard of flipping houses. Basically, I take businesses and do the same thing.
Nice. So what's your typical timeline on a flip?
I like to hold the business until it pays itself off. So typically that may be 2 years, but we've done it in a shorter period as 6 months, depending on how much we grow the business. Until recently, pretty much everything that I bought was intended on kind of being a flip from the very beginning. Now I'm starting to hold on to things for a longer period of time. And I've done, as you know, offline and online deals. And some of the online deals coming from an offline world, it's like, man, this is so easy, so much easier compared to the offline, that it's like, I'll hold on to this for a longer period of time. But on the offline deals, I like to get into those. A lot of times there is a lot more low-hanging fruit where you can leverage technology and grow it pretty quickly, get it paid off, and then flip it. But in between that 6 month to 2 year mark is mostly when we're going to exit the deal.
Got it. So you said that it makes things much easier in the online versus the offline. If you were to pick one or two things, why would that be?
Oh my goodness, just one or two. It's just there's a lot of things that you have to go through on the front end, whether it's licensing or having a lease, and just a lot bigger commitment when you're getting into an offline deal. You're not gonna get into an offline deal and just like the other day, I literally bought a little $10,000 business. And it was like I saw it one day, 2 days later, I owned it and was making money from it. For offline, there aren't those little small deals that you're going to just go into. Every time you do a deal, even if it is small, you've got a lot of upfront work. The other thing is, most of the time you're dealing with some number of employees, and that creates a little bit more of a headache just as far as management and all of that goes. So when you get, obviously there's some benefits. I love offline deals, but because there's a lot less competition, you know what I mean? But they're definitely, when it comes to management and operations, I think online deals have a big leg up.
So licensing, employees, leases, those are all the things that I gave up and sold my offline business so that I could do the online stuff. Those are the exact reasons. So I totally get it. So we're going to, in just a minute, I want to ask you about some of these deals that you're doing. But before I do that, I'm always interested in what kind of quotes that people share on social media. So I pulled one of your quotes off of your Facebook page, and I want to read it to you and kind of get your take on what this means to you. So This was a quote, kind of a paraphrase quote from a guy named Edmund Lee, which is, surround yourself with those who see the greatness within you, even when you don't see it in yourself. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think one of the people that changed my life early on was a mentor of mine who a lot of people said before I even realized that I was necessarily flipping businesses. I was really searching for that business that was going to make me the next Bill Gates or whatever. And I was like, man, if I can just find that business to buy, I can grow it, take it public, and that kind of thing. And a lot of people were saying, oh, you got to meet this guy. And I would ask him, what does he do for a living? They're like, I don't really know what he does for a living, but I think he's a guy that you should meet. And so finally I run into him like, man, a lot of people have been telling me we should meet. What is it that you do for a living? Nobody really knows. It's like, well, to sum it up, I guess I pretty much flip hospitals. And for me at that age, I had just never even, knew that you could buy a hospital, let alone flip a hospital. And that initial conversation was a transition point for me. But one of the things that always amazed me with it was that this guy had so much faith in my abilities that it really grew my expectations of myself. And so I had a level of expectation of like, yeah, I think I can go out and I can do great things in the world. And his challenge was always not even necessarily think bigger. I think so many people are focused. And one of the problems that I have with entrepreneur education and entrepreneur motivation in general is that there's this constant push for bigger is better, and you got to go bigger and bigger. And I think that stepping back from that is so valuable, getting in touch with what you really want as an individual. What do you want your life to be? The main reason we're here on earth isn't to have the biggest bank account that you have to leave when you die. It's to build the life that you want to live. And so he really challenged me in that way, and thinking outside of the scripts that were given to live by, and figuring out, okay, why are you doing this? So why do you want to go and do that? And that was his thing, is always why, and the next why, and why this, and why. And it really changed my view on wealth and all of that. But more than anything, he was one of those people that I surrounded myself with, that even beyond what I thought I was capable of, he was always pushing me to think not just bigger, but in a totally different way.
So is he somebody you can share the name, or is he known out there? Is he just sort of prefers to be behind the scenes?
He is definitely behind the scenes. Okay. He's absolutely behind the scenes. First name is Mike. I wouldn't want people trying to get in touch with him because he doesn't want that.
Yeah.
Just a really amazing guy. Has done deals in China and just really interesting. But he's definitely not out there, trying to mentor or do anything. We just have built a personal relationship over the years. And he has an amazing story. I wish he would, because it's such an amazing story how he ended up buying his first hospital and all of that stuff.
With this, had you already bought your first business before you met him or heard about him? Or was this before you even got into the game?
This was after I bought my first business, because the very first business wasn't any big plan. It literally was just being the customer of a business that turned out that it wanted to sell, that got me into my first deal. And then after selling that, trying to start stuff and realizing like, man, this is an absolute headache. So I went out and eventually did another deal, just because I kind of recognized, hey, if I can buy something that can pay for itself in a couple of years, I can sell that and go do something else bigger. So I actually met him when I was on my fourth deal. And I, at that point, was really stuck, I think, in a poor man's wealth building strategy. So one of the things that I was excited about was building my net worth. And so even how I viewed those deals, like, oh, I'm going to build and I'm going to have this huge net worth. At the point I met him, I owned I bought a business called Homevestors. And, I was excited about holding some rentals and building this big net worth and that kind of thing. And
was this a franchise? Homevestors?
Yeah, Homevestors is a franchise.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, I've bought several existing franchise businesses over the course of my time. But yeah, one of those transition points was not really focusing on net worth as much as you focus on where's the cash flow coming in. And so that transition, how I started to buy businesses and all of that.
So think back to what was the situation you were in when you walked in to meet this guy? Where was it? Were you having coffee together? What was it?
This was a small little event that was held by a nonprofit organization. I can't remember what organization it was. This is about how many years ago? Yeah, about 11 years ago. So it was at a little kind of country club kind of thing, and it was an event held by a nonprofit. And obviously, I didn't recognize him. I didn't know who he was, but somebody mentioned, "Oh, yeah, that's Mike over there." So I went and introduced myself, and that was definitely, I had no idea even at that point. Like I said, I had no idea even what the guy did for a living. I just heard his name. But yeah, that's where we met.
You met there. Okay. And then so the reason I'm asking these questions is because those listening may be interested in finding a mentor and surrounding themselves with people who see the greatness within them. And a lot of times it's very intimidating to approach people or to really understand how you can develop a relationship with somebody so successful and why would they care about you? When I have, I don't have anything to offer, it's a horrible mindset to have. So the reason is I want to dive into the story a little bit is to kind of share with people the practical pieces here and to share that it's possible for people to find really interesting folks like this who can really have a huge impact in their life. So how did you ask him for your first meeting?
I just asked, "Hey, do you mind if I come by?" So even before asking for the first meeting, one of the things that people, when you're actually out there doing things that makes that meeting more possible is just being somebody who is taking action, even if you're failing. Just being somebody saying, "I've done this, I've done that." Nobody wants to talk about what you desire. Nobody wants to talk about
what you're going to do.
Yeah, nobody wants to talk about that. They want to talk about what you're doing right now. And so I think that's one of the things that impressed him. And I think you've got to impress the person. Nobody wants to spend time with a person that they're not on some level impressed with. And so, I think I think he was impressed, one, that I had gotten done what I had gotten done with the lack of knowledge, literally bumping through the dark to get things done and making a lot of mistakes that, now I'm happy to help my clients avoid. But I was kind of at that point trying to figure things out. And I think he was impressed by that. I was like, "Man, I've done this, I've lost this, I figured that out," and that kind of thing. And you got to pull them into your adventure. Everybody wants to latch on. He had his adventure years ago, like I said, buying his first hospital. And I think he saw in me like, "Man, this guy's on his own adventure." And I think that's a big part of it. So number one, impressing the person with your actions, not with, you talk to people, a lot of times they want to impress you with what they're going to do. Like you said, like, "Oh, I'm going to do this and it's going to be a multi-million-dollar business." And then it's like, okay. So impressing the person with what you're actually doing and then making them want to be a part of your journey because it sounds like an adventure that's exciting. And so I didn't realize it back then. I literally just was going out and doing things but looking back, I could see from his reaction, he really loved the thrill of what I was doing and out there taking action and figuring out.
Hey, we'll get right back to the show in a few seconds, but if you like what you're hearing, you definitely won't want to miss next week's episode with James Agate from Skyrocket Digital, where we talk about how he's built a content marketing and link building machine. To make sure you don't miss next week's episode, pause the show right now and head over to iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app and subscribe so you can start automatically getting new episodes on your device. As a thank you for listening, I'm personally inviting you to join the private Facebook group called the Rhodium Community. Head over to rhodiumweekend.com/community to get free instant access to me and a highly connected community of other online entrepreneurs. Now back to the show. Yeah, there's almost this level of vicariously living. You know, he sees that you've got these big dreams. He sees that you're taking action. He sees himself in you, and he wants to support you because it's like, you know, somebody probably helped him and he's giving back to you. You know, I think that's the kind of motivation. And I love what you said. Pull them into your adventure. I mean, that is so cool. So tell me about the first meeting that you guys had where like your mind was just like blown. What did he say?
So going back, talking about that whole net worth thing was one of the things where you just are because we're taught and there were just so many. So one was the net worth thing. It's like, you can't pay bills with net worth. That was one of the things that he would always say. You know, you got to get out of that thing. The other thing is...
But before we go to the other thing, so he said you can't pay bills with net worth. You said you were all about, I want to go build my network. That you said that a couple minutes ago. So what was your mindset? And hearing him say that, what did you think? Like, what was going through your mind?
So at that point, you know, I'm young, you've read, you know, everybody focuses on worth. So from the outside, even when you're reading a Forbes and like all these things, it's like, oh, here is this person's net worth.
On paper, right?
So yeah. And so for me, you know, I owned this business, I had some real estate and And so he's like, one of the things so even before that, this is a huge transition point, is there was never, he didn't waste time. There wasn't a chit chat. You know, when I came down to meet with him, he said, bring your personal financial statement. Let's take a look at your bank statements. Let's take a look at your business's profit and loss and balance sheet. We're not sitting around chatting about theory. It's like, okay, like, oh, you spent this much on this stuff. Why'd you do that? And like, it's very specific.
Wow.
So when it came to my personal financial statement, and this is something I do with my clients, sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. And it's like, we're going to dig into everything.
Well, yeah, that comes
I learned that from him.
Yeah, and I think that comes from what our parents taught us about money is you're not supposed to talk about money, you know, and a lot of those types of things. And so that hesitation to share with somebody. And the other thing is that you may feel like you might look like a little bit of a fool as well. So yeah. Was that the case with you, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I think it was a huge concern. And I just really wanted to meet with this guy. And so it's like, if that's what I have to do to make it happen, then, at the end of the day, what you pay attention to is what's going to grow and improve. And so many people want to kind of sweep their personal finances under the rug and not pay attention to it. And then they're confused about, well, why can I get wealthy? It's like, well, it probably helped to just start being open and tell people like, man, I'm dealing with this and that, and putting that focus and figuring it out, and maybe even taking some advice. And so that was one of the first things that was a transition. Then we, talking about the net worth thing, when it comes to net worth, at the end of the day, it's just not a valuable metric. And so I came in saying, oh, look at my personal financial statement. Look at where my net worth is. In, 3 years, I'm going to have this $2 million net worth. And, I'm 25-year-old, 26-year-old. So kid, like, aren't you impressed? Like really trying to impress him. And he's like, net worth means nothing. Like, this is not valuable. What's your cash flow going to be? What's your passive cash flow? You every month, bill collectors want to be paid. You got to pay for your mortgage. You got to pay for this. And they're not going to accept net worth. Net worth can disappear just like that, if we've seen in so many crashes and blah, blah, blah. The other thing that was really interesting is transitioning my thinking from long-term thinking. And I mean, like I said, this is just millions and millions of little lessons. But one of those things is that poor people focus on the future. And so it's this big focus. And so we can easily be sold by Wall Street on this concept of, oh, yeah, it definitely makes sense to put this money in here. And guess what? When you're about to die, you get to spend it. And we get to have it that whole time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, when you're physically unable to really enjoy it as you would have been able to in your youth, right?
Yeah. And it's exciting. I mean, and now I think the social collective is starting to realize, like, okay, this whole thing doesn't make sense. But, this is like 10 years ago, like people weren't even having conversations like that. And so for him to start telling me like, only thing you should be focused on is like, what's the cash flow that's coming in today? How much money am I putting to the bank today? Like, do not invest for a 30-year, 40-year thing. And, like, I'm thinking like, no, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who are going to listen to this like, no. I mean, in our gut, because we're so trained and people have to realize that it's all marketing. All of that is just marketing. It's not meant to help you. Like them telling you, oh, the safe thing to do is put your money over here and wait forever. That is only marketing. And so, things like having the mortgage and that makes sense for all these years and And so that was, I think, James Altucher. I'm so glad he's one of the people that's just breaking these things down about, okay, let's really look at the ROI on owning a house. Let's really look at the ROI on certain people going to college in certain degrees. Let's break down the facts as opposed to taking everything for the kind of surface of what it is. And then one of the last things that I will say is, really stopping me from ever considering starting a business. Wow. One of the things that he would reiterate, among other things like, terms are way more important than price and that kind of thing, was the fact that going into a startup is a luxury. That's something that people, because of the sheer odds of it working, it's something that people who are already financially independent have the luxury to go out and do. And people that are telling folks that, do have, you kind of have two extremes. You have the person that just has absolutely zero and it's like, okay, you have nothing to lose, go out and just hustle. Then you really just, it's not a luxury, it's just your only option. Like you can go out and hustle and just figure it's not your only option, but for those folks, there's no downside. You're already at zero.
Right.
And then you have the other folks that are super wealthy and it's like, okay, you can go and put money into venture capital and that kind of thing and go and try to start your own business. That makes sense. But the people that are like taking actual capital to go out and put it on 33 on the roulette, which is, the exact same as putting it into a startup when it comes to long-term odds, it's not a wise thing. You're literally better off putting your money on black. Like you just go and put your money on black. You by far beat the odds of starting a business. And I remember one of the conversations that we had, and, I'd sold a business. I was like, man, I got this great idea for a startup. Again, kind of like walking in, bragging about my net worth. I was bragging. I was excited about this startup. I knew he was going to love it. And he asked me, he's like, so I had my computer bag when he's like, you got a computer in there? I was like, yeah. He's like, let me see it. He's like, all right, what kind of computer is that? And I was like, it's Dale. And, it's like, well, so why didn't you, like Dale builds the computer. Why didn't you just build the computer? And I'm like, well, I don't have time for that. It's like, well, you could go and buy the parts. You could have saved some money. It'd be easier. You wouldn't have to do that. You would have, been able to build your computer, have it yourself. I'm like, well, that just doesn't make sense. Why would I go and try to figure out how to build my computer and figure out all the skills that I need to do that? I don't have anybody to go back to if something goes wrong, all these things. And it's like, exactly. Like, just like you wouldn't go out and build your car, just like you wouldn't go out and build your laptop. It doesn't make sense for the average person to try to learn all the millions of skills, be an expert at marketing, be an expert at creating financial systems, operating systems, be an expert at tech, be an expert at hiring people, managing people. Absolutely impossible. I mean, you're basically, it just like we see in the statistics, it is very rare that you're going to happen to have everything come together. Most of the time it doesn't. Even you've seen it when you buy businesses, Chris, and I see it all the time, where even when they kind of make it, there are issues in the business. We get to come in and just fix those issues because it's most of the time just hobbling and barely making it because everything came together beautifully. So those were just some of the hundreds of things that
well, I'm going to encourage, So you mentioned a few things, which was number one is stop thinking about net worth and long-term net worth. Start thinking about what is your cash flow you've got coming in the door today, and stop trying to build everything. Stop trying to learn everything so you can build something. Instead, just go buy something that's already working. So that's really some great advice. And what I want to do now is sort of taking all of these lessons that you've learned from this mentor. Let's talk about one of the deals that you really applied some of these principles with. And let's dive into how that all went down.
Yeah, man. So let's talk about a client deal. I had a client come to us who was working in the office.
Real quick before, so when you say client, what were you providing to them as a service?
Oh, so basically, I've done a lot of deals over the last 16 years. So I've been involved personally in about 40 deals, and I've helped a lot of people do deals. And so people come to me basically just to help them walk through the process, finding the deal, doing due diligence, coming up with valuation, putting together the financing and negotiating, all that good stuff. So
you're providing sort of almost a buyer advisory sort of service to walk them through this whole process, helps them reduce their risk, and you're getting compensated basically for that. So that makes sense. Okay, so you were helping this person with a deal.
Yeah. So we get compensated. We help them through the process, and we help them find the right business, all that good stuff.
Great.
One of the things that I learned, which is another thing just really through experience, is if I could have a business where my personal interest and personal skill set was really valuable, that becomes a huge opportunity. So we've seen over the years where when we connect the right person with a deal, that deal ends up exploding. So before going into this story, a quick kind of example of that is, like I said, nobody is an expert at the endless list of things, especially online. You start getting distracted with Facebook, and now you're kind of become a social media expert, or get distracted with PPC or retargeting, And content is the big thing. And so no matter what, there's nobody that's going to be an expert at everything. And so when we're buying businesses, the opportunity becomes buying a business that is basically has deficiencies where you have strengths. So quick examples, we had a lady who had tested really high on her skill set and aptitude for marketing. And it doesn't mean that she has a tremendous amount of experience in that. It's just that when I get into a business where I'm going to focus, isn't going to be the finance, it's not going to be the operation, it's not going to be it's going to be the marketing. That's what I'm going to enjoy. We ended up introducing her to a deal where the owners were programmers, and they spent zero money on marketing, zero time on marketing, even to the point that we got off the call and she called me saying that was a complete waste of time. I couldn't understand what they were saying. Everything in regards to this business is all about programming. They told me everything that needs to be done next is programming. Everything that they've done before is programming. I can't run this. And long story short, the reason I said Jumbo is, she's grown. We did end up doing that deal. I was like, that's the exact point. We want to buy that business because They haven't spent a dime on marketing. Just because they have a great product, they've attracted people in. So she's been able to grow that business. Actually, on our YouTube, we've got a great kind of case study on that one, where she's grown that business from, we've got it $250,000. She's grown to $500,000 last year. And then this year it's on track to be a $1.2 million, $1.4 million business. So that's what happens when you connect the right person with the right deal. So this lady had come to us. She had actually talked to a broker before. He said that the maximum size business she could buy was $40,000, $50,000 business. And, she wanted to get something that was going to allow her to spend some more time with her kids. Both her and her husband were working. She basically just wanted to replace a small salary of about $45,000 a year. And so we go through the testing and all that stuff. She was a very religious person and was Catholic. And so as we're searching for deals, and one of the things that we have is, we just have a team that's always based on the things that we pull in our testing questions. We pull deals that are a good match. And in this case, we had come across a deal that was basically sold Catholic products to, rosemary beads, that kind of thing. And great business. Only problem was it was a lot bigger business than she could buy. And, it's like $190,000 business, pulling about $90,000 in income. And so one of the things that we train people on is the fact that you can raise capital. I think even for me, I'm really glad with the first couple of my deals, I did end up going out and raising capital. And I think there is a process that you have to go through to raise that capital. And this was a deal where, based on you doing deals that your network is going to be interested in, let's say that it's a person that goes out to drink a lot. And a lot of people don't think about this, but you go out and drink all the time, and you've got your beer buddies. You know everybody at the bar. You and your friends every week. You all go out and you drink at this beer, and you're into beer. Guess what? If you come up with an opportunity to buy a microbrewery, it's going to be a lot easier for you to raise capital than the person that is, if that guy tried to buy the Catholic business.
Right. Or vice versa.
Exactly. And our client couldn't have raised money to do a microbrewery. So she went to people in her network, and they said, hey, I've got this really great opportunity. And actually, somebody that she had no idea had any money, and this is another crucial thing for raising capital, and literally, I think to get into the emotion as well, thinking when you find that deal that is the perfect deal, and you realize, man, this is exactly what I want. This is my dream business, and I don't have the capital to do it. That's a tough thing. It's not like, even if you want a Ferrari, they're still making Ferraris. I can save up and eventually get a newer Ferrari. But when you find the perfect business, you have no idea if you're ever going to find another one of those things. So that's where you got to be emotionally know how crucial this is. And so she went to her network, and we, anybody who's thinking about raising capital, you got to talk to everybody. You never know who has the capital. And sure enough, she talked to some folks in her network, and they said, we'd love to invest. And she's thinking, maybe they'll do, 10,000, 20,000. And it's like, no, we want to do everything that you need. And she's like, wow. No, I can't take it. You guys are broke. I can't take your money. It's like, well, yeah, we can tell you, like, actually, we're not broke at all. We've got all of this. We can show you the proof. And we want to take a little portion of it and give you everything you need to get this deal done.
Oh, that's amazing.
And yeah, a really, really incredible story there. And just the way it was set up was beautiful with her getting still the substantial amount of cash flow and that kind of thing. And probably the other neat thing is, I call her, I always do follow-ups. And so I call her a few months later and it's like, hey, how's it going? You're back at home with your kids and how you enjoy it? She's like, well, I realized that, man, if I kept working, I could make $130,000 a year instead of just 90, and my kids can help out with the business and all that. And so it's funny how that transitions sometimes once you have those opportunities. But, this was literally a person that was told before that the maximum size business they could ever get approved for was a $40,000 business, which basically means that she would have been making $20,000 a year. And, now she's somebody that's making 135, and that's a really, huge difference.
So, and what was her actual investment in this? Was it the 50K that she put in?
Yeah. So I believe her amount, and this is I do a lot of deals, but off the top of my head, she had done about 50,000, and we had some terms from them as well. So I think
the seller.
The seller, I'm sorry. Yeah. So that we negotiated some terms with the seller, which is something you always want to try to do. We had her down payment, then we had and I think she was about 50. And so, to be able to leverage, and then the investors were really more equity investors. So how do you set up, one of the things that a lot of people don't take advantage of when it comes to raising capital is being really professional in your presentation and laying out a plan. So if you can show that investor, hey, here's what our plan is, this is what we're going to do, and this is how you're going to get your return out of it, you can a lot of times set up the deal to be what you need to be from an income level and kind of what you need to out of the deal, as long as you can clearly communicate to the investor, this is what your benefit out of the deal is going to be. So you can create these win-win situations. But she had about 50. I think they had 100, and the rest was terms.
Yeah, see, this is so cool because that 50 originally would have been maybe a 20K per year cash flow. Instead, she used that 50 to generate 135K per year cash flow. So she's probably got her investment well out of this. She's probably also making her investors in this deal pretty happy with the returns that they're getting. The seller gets out of the deal. So, I mean, it just all around, it sounds like this one worked out really, really well. A couple questions related to what you said here. So you mentioned, I think, some kind of aptitude test. Is that something proprietary? Is that something anybody can take? Do you have a recommendation on where to go from that?
It is something we worked with a guy out of San Diego to put together. He's a doctor, and basically it's a little twist on some things that were already out there. But yeah, that is something that is proprietary.
What would be something close to that?
What's that now?
Oh, what would be something close to that, like a DISC profile or a Myers-Briggs or something along those lines?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah,
okay.
It's very similar to a Myers-Briggs.
The other thing that's interesting here is the emotional piece. So you always talk about in deals that you never want emotions to come into play when you're making decisions on deals. But in this case, you can leverage the emotion to convince investors and play on that so that maybe they're more likely to kind of get behind you and that kind of thing. So that's pretty interesting sort of flip on leveraging emotion in certain situations. So that's a great story. Yeah. So,
and then the final thing I'll say on that one is when everything is aligned that way, guess what? She's able to connect with that seller in a way that had them willing to do some terms when it wasn't necessary to get the deal done. So they could have gone to another seller, but guess what? She was able to talk to them about the things in the Catholic world and, opportunities in the business. They saw, okay, she gets this. She understands what we're doing, and she's going to carry on this legacy. It's not somebody that's just kind of coming in and trying to do this from a business standpoint.
Yeah, that's That's actually something. I mean, my brother-in-law just bought a house, or no, sorry, not my brother-in-law. One of my friends just moved back to the area here, and they said that the reason they got this really good deal on a site is because they kind of pulled the heartstrings in their offer letter about how they're this newlywed couple and all this kind of stuff. So I think that's a great thing to leverage there too.
It does. It works with businesses as well.
So just to kind of wrap this up, I always have this question I ask everybody at the end of the episode, and I'm really excited to hear what your answer is. So stick with me. It's kind of a fun scenario here. So let's say that you meet a benevolent investor, and he's willing to bankroll any business or investment you want to do for the rest of your life. But first, he has a test for you. He's going to give you $5,000 to invest however you want. The rule is you have to invest the full amount into something, but if you lose it, you don't have to pay it back. Here's the catch. You have to return to him in 36 hours with $10,000 or more to pass the test. So the question is, how would you pass that test?
Oh man, that's a great question. So one of the things that I am a big believer in is using assets that are already existing. So let's break down the 36 hours, because sometimes people come up with things and it's like, man, you can't do that in 36 hours. So you wake up. I wouldn't even start the 36 hours until about 10 a.m. when businesses that are kind of retail businesses are opening. I would go into several businesses, look for the business owner, tell them I want to do $5,000 worth of business with them. I need to speak to the owner. I would tell the owner, listen, we're looking for a business that we can partner with. We're actually going to put $5,000 into promoting the business, but we got to find the right business. Basically what I would look for is a business that has a large database. And one of the things you'll find, I've talked about this in some of my other interviews, when there are just a lot of businesses with low-hanging fruit or just assets that are underutilized. And that's what we're looking for. It could be inventory that's just sitting there stale. It could be a list of people. And I'm just basically spending the first 4 hours trying to have as many of these 15, 20-minute conversations looking for different assets in the business. The cool thing is I'm probably not even going to spend or touch the $5,000. What I want to do is connect two businesses that kind of complement each other. If not, find a business that I can just go into and use their own list and promote their own product and make money. Right. But if I can't do that, then I'm going to take two businesses. And let's say one is a hair salon, the other is a spa. And I tell them, hey, we're going to do $5,000 worth of promotion. I've got the spa. They've got a list of 20,000 people they're willing to promote you to. And we're going to promote that product. Sometimes you do cross promotions. But one of the reasons that we started to do this, we just saw these opportunities. We did one with the fitness gym where basically the fitness gym had a huge database of past customer and clients that had canceled. And there basically was a couple of different opportunities for them to promote. One was a personal fitness, like, hey, we know that you guys it didn't work for you to be a member of our thing. We found that one of the ways to stay motivated and disciplined is to have a personal trainer. We want to promote this new guy. It's not a part of our business, but since it didn't, we want you to be healthy. So if you're not going to join us, join this guy. And then also with a granola bar company that actually one of our clients bought, promoting his company to that list and that kind of thing. Bottom line is you're going to figure out who has either a list and maybe who has some old product or inventory or space, and you can pre-sell even down to, if it's a hair salon, pre-sell a bunch of gift cards. You could get them to agree to take 25%, even 50%. Groupon takes 50% for doing something similar. Right. And the neat thing is you don't even need a list. You don't need a product. You can make that money.
Love it. So if folks wanted to connect with you, how can they do that?
I am on Twitter, so they can feel free to tweet me at Ace Chapman. And people can email me. I am accessible. So people can email me. It's ace@acechapman.com.
Perfect. So thanks so much for being here. I want to ask if you have any final thoughts to leave us with.
No, man, just that I am so excited about a Rhodium event coming up. I'm excited about the podcast. We do have a podcast that is now officially out finally after months of work called it's the Web Equity Show. And so be sure to check that out. And we talk a lot. It's with Justin Cook from Empire Flippers. We talk a lot about buying online businesses and doing these same deals.